The morning sun filtered through the large windows of Daily Grind Café, casting warm streaks of light across the worn wooden floors. Behind the counter, Emma wiped down the espresso machine for the third time that hour, her fingers tracing the familiar grooves. She loved this place, the hum of conversation, the rich scent of coffee, the way regulars smiled when she remembered their orders. But today her usual cheer was dimmed by exhaustion. Rent was due soon, and her manager, Mr. Carter, had been cutting her hours without explanation. The bell above the door jingled, and Emma glanced up, forcing a smile. An older man shuffled in, his posture stiff, his hands slightly unsteady. His faded jacket bore a patch she recognized, 82nd Airborne Division. A veteran. He hesitated near the entrance, scanning the menu with a quiet intensity, as if calculating every penny. "Morning, sir," Emma called, softening her voice. "What can I get you?" He met her eyes, and for a second she saw something flicker. Pride, maybe, or reluctance. "Just black coffee, please." She nodded, but when he pulled out a crumpled dollar bill, she hesitated. The price had gone up last week. Without thinking, she punched in the old amount. "Here you go," she said, sliding the cup toward him. His brow furrowed when he saw the change she handed back. "You gave me too much." Emma shook her head. "Veteran's discount." The lie came easily, but the warmth in his smile made it worth it. She didn't notice Mr. Carter watching from the office door. By noon, her manager called her into the cramped back room. His voice was clipped. "We don't give discounts without approval, Emma." It was just one coffee. Policy. He interrupted. "You're already on thin ice with your hours. Consider this your last shift." The words hit like a punch. She opened her mouth to argue, but the hardness in his eyes stopped her. Swallowing the lump in her throat, she untied her apron and left without another word. The sidewalk outside felt too bright, too loud. She blinked back tears, clutching her bag. What now? How would she explain this to her roommate? To her mom? Who'd warned her this job was barely keeping her afloat? An hour later, the cafe was unusually quiet. Mr. Carter manned the register, his expression smug. Then the door chimed again. 4 Marines in uniform walked in. The air shifted. Customers glanced up. Mr. Carter straightened, suddenly attentive. The tallest Marine, his stance firm but his eyes sharp, scanned the room. "Where's Emma?" Mr. Carter faltered. She doesn't work here anymore." The Marine's jaw tightened. He exchanged a look with his comrades, then turned back. "Funny, because her kindness just saved one of ours, and we don't forget that." Silence settled over the cafe. Something was about to change. The Marines didn't move. They didn't raise their voices or make demands. They just stood there, a quiet, unshakable presence. Mr. Carter's fingers tapped nervously against the counter. The other customers had stopped pretending not to watch. A barista near the back froze mid-pour, milk frothing over the edge of a cup. The oldest of the Marines, a man with streaks of gray in his close-cropped hair, finally spoke. "Emma gave our friend coffee this morning. He hasn't had an easy time since coming home. That small thing, it mattered." His voice was calm, but there was weight behind it. Mr. Carter swallowed. "Look, I run a business. Rules are rules." The youngest Marine, barely out of his teens, crossed his arms. "So do we. Ours just involve looking out for people." A woman at a nearby table, who had been quietly sipping her latte, set it down with a soft clink. "You fired her for that." Her voice carried, and a few others murmured in agreement. Mr. Carter's face flushed. He opened his mouth, but before he could respond, the bell above the door chimed again. Emma stood there, her eyes red-rimmed, holding a box of her things from the back room. She hadn't expected to walk into this. Her gaze flickered between the Marines, the customers, and Mr. Carter, who now looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The tall Marine turned toward her. "Ma'am." he said, nodding respectfully. "We heard what happened." Emma's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say. Then from the back of the cafe, a voice called out, "Hey Emma, you making coffee somewhere else? Because I'll follow." "You." It was one of her regulars, an older trucker who always ordered a double espresso with a splash of cinnamon. A few others nodded. Mr. Carter's expression shifted, something between panic and realization. The Marines hadn't threatened him. They hadn't needed to. The room had done it for them. Emma looked around, her heart pounding. She hadn't planned this. She hadn't planned anything. But in that moment, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Hope. And then, from the doorway, another voice cut through the silence. "Actually," said a man in a crisp suit, stepping inside, "I think I might have a better idea." Every head turned. Who was this guy? The man in the suit had an easy confidence, like someone used to walking into rooms and changing the energy. He glanced around the cafe, taking in the Marines, the tense silence, and Emma standing there with her box of belongings. Then he smiled, not the polished corporate kind, but something warmer. "Name's Daniel Reyes," he said, extending a hand toward Emma. "I own a few coffee shops downtown, and I've been looking for someone like you." Emma blinked. "Me?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah, the kind of person who sees a veteran needing a break and doesn't think twice about giving it." He shot a glance at Mr. Carter. "That's not just good service, that's good business." One of the Marines let out a low chuckle. "Damn right." Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Emma. "I'd love to talk. Manager position, better pay, benefits." He paused, then added, "And, no, firing people for having a heart." A ripple of laughter spread through the cafe. Even Emma exhaled a small, disbelieving laugh, her fingers tightening around the card. Mr. Carter, now a shade paler, cleared his throat. "Now hold on." But the trucker regular cut him off. "Too late, man. You had your chance." He stood, dropping a $5 bill on the table. "I'm out. Let me know where you land, Emma." Daniel tilted his head toward the door. "You free now? We can grab a booth and talk details." Emma hesitated, then looked at the Marines. The oldest one gave her a small, approving nod. "Yeah," she said, finally smiling. "Yeah, I'm free." As she followed Daniel to a corner table, the cafe buzzed with murmurs. Mr. Carter stood behind the counter, staring at the empty space where Emma had been, the register drawer still open like a silent accusation. Outside, the veteran from earlier, the one Emma had given coffee to, stood on the sidewalk, watching through the window. He hadn't said a word this whole time, but as he turned to leave, his shoulders looked a little straighter, and in his hand, he clutched a napkin with a phone number scribbled on it. Emma's, slipped to him hours ago with the quiet offer, "If you ever need help, call me." He hadn't expected to need it so soon, but then again, he hadn't expected her to lose her job over him either, and he definitely hadn't expected what he was about to do next. The veteran, his name was Frank, stared at the napkin in his hand, the numbers slightly smudged from his grip. He hadn't asked for help in years, not since the VA waiting lists and the paperwork that never seemed to end. But this was different. Emma had lost her job because of him. And now, watching her through the cafe window as she leaned forward across the table, listening intently to Daniel's offer, Frank made a decision. He pulled out his phone, an old flip model he kept mostly for emergencies, and dialed the only person he knew who might understand what to do next. 2 rings. Then a gruff, familiar voice answered. "Frank, that you?" "Yeah, it's me," Frank said, his voice low. "Listen, I need a favor." Meanwhile, inside the cafe, Emma listened as Daniel outlined his vision, a new location, one that prioritized community over corporate rules. "We could even partner with local veterans groups," he said, tapping the table. "Free coffee for service members every Monday. Job training for those transitioning out." Emma's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. But why me? You don't even know me. Daniel leaned back, studying her. I know enough. You did the right thing without expecting anything back. That's rare. He paused. Besides, I've been in that guy's shoes. He nodded toward the window, where Frank had been standing moments before. Nobody gave me coffee, but someone gave me a chance when I needed it, just paying it forward. Emma opened her mouth to respond, but the cafe door swung open again. This time it was Frank, and behind him a dozen more veterans, some in worn jackets, others in clean-pressed shirts, all filing into the cafe with quiet determination. Mr. Carter's jaw dropped. Frank stepped forward, his voice steady. Heard. You might be hiring, he said to Daniel, then glanced at Emma. And we heard you might be the one doing it. Daniel grinned. You timing this on purpose? Frank shrugged. Marines might have made a call or two. The cafe erupted, not in chaos, but in something warmer. Veterans shook Daniel's hand, introduced themselves to Emma, and one by one they pulled out resumes, dog-eared but carefully folded. The trucker regular whistled. Well, damn. That's one way to do it. Emma, her heart full, turned to Daniel. So, when do we start? Outside, unnoticed by anyone, Mr. Carter's newest hire, a nervous college kid, peered through the window, then quietly texted a friend. Think I might need a new job. And in the back corner, the oldest Marine slipped a $20 bill into the tip jar. It was more than enough to cover a cup of coffee. But it was never just about the coffee. The next morning, the now hiring sign in the window of Daniel's cafe had a line stretching down the block. Not just veterans, but students, single parents, even a few former daily grind regulars who'd decided loyalty meant more than convenience. Emma stood behind the counter of the still unfinished space, her sleeves rolled up as she helped sand down the reclaimed wood for the tables. Frank was there too, showing a young Marine how to wire the new espresso machine. You sure you know what you're doing? The kid asked, eyeing the tangled cords. Frank smirked. Son, I fixed radios under gunfire. This is a toaster with a degree. Laughter rippled through the room. Daniel, sleeves dusty from hauling in crates of locally roasted beans, caught Emma's eye and nodded toward the door. Outside, a familiar figure lingered on the sidewalk. Mr. Carter, his hands shoved in his pockets, watching. Emma hesitated, then walked out. The morning air was crisp, the silence between them heavier. He spoke first. You, really did it. She crossed her arms, not unkindly. We did. Mr. Carter scuffed his shoe against the pavement. His next words came out in a rush. Corporate's auditing me. Turns out cutting hours to avoid benefits looks real bad when your entire staff quits on camera. He nodded toward the security footage from yesterday that had, somehow, made its way online. The Marines' stern faces, Emma's quiet dignity, it had gone viral under the hashtag #OursCoffeeWithHonor. Emma softened. What now? He shrugged, defeated. Thought maybe you could use a dishwasher. Inside, through the glass, Frank whistled sharply. Emma, we got a problem. Some idiot hooked up the milk steamer backward. Daniel's voice followed, laughing. That idiot was you, Frank. Emma turned back to Mr. Carter, saw the humility in his slumped shoulders. The cafe behind her was full of second chances. Why not one more? Shift starts at 6 a.m., she said. Don't be late. As she walked back inside, the bell above the door chimed. Not the sharp jingle of endings, but the bright sound of beginnings. Somewhere in the crowd, a Marine quietly dropped. Another 20 in the tip jar. This time it was Mr. Carter's resume tucked underneath. The grand opening of Grounds for Good arrived on a golden autumn morning, the kind where the air smelled like cinnamon and crisp leaves. The sidewalk was packed, veterans, families, even a local news crew drawn by the buzz of the viral story. Emma adjusted her new apron, her stomach fluttering. Just 6 days ago she'd been fired. Now she was handing Frank a steaming cup across the counter, his usual black coffee, but this time served in a mug with the cafe's logo. 1 cup at a time. First official customer, she said, sliding it toward him. Frank shook his head, pushing the mug to the elderly woman beside him, a Webby-Puit nurse with sharp eyes and a ribbon-covered jacket. Ma'am goes first. The crowd erupted in applause. Someone started singing God Bless America off-key. Daniel, balancing a tower of pastries, shot Emma an incredulous look. We're gonna need more coffee. Then the door swung open. A man in a military dress uniform entered, his posture rigid, his gaze scanning the room until it landed on Frank. The chatter died instantly. Sergeant Harlow, the officer said, voice clipped. Frank went very still. Colonel, Emma's fingers tightened. On the counter, this wasn't part of the plan. The colonel stepped forward, pulling an envelope from his breast pocket. Been trying to track you down for weeks. Your benefits claim finally went through. He held it out. Thick, official. Back pay, all of it. Frank didn't move. That's not possible. The colonel's stern expression cracked just a little. Turns out your file misfiled after you complained about the VA delays. Someone noticed when the news story hit. His eyes flicked to Emma. Seems you've got friends in unexpected places. The room exhaled as Frank took the envelope, hands trembling. The WB nurse patted his arm. Told you they'd come through, kid. Daniel seized the moment, hoisting a carafe. Coffee's on the house today. As the crowd cheered, Emma caught sight of Mr. Carter, now employee of the month after. His relentless dishwashing hustle, quietly refilling the colonel's cup with an extra shot of espresso. For your trouble, sir, he muttered. The colonel raised an eyebrow. You're not what I expected. Mr. Carter shrugged. Neither is this place. Outside, the news reporter turned to her cameraman. You getting this? He grinned. Oh yeah, America's gonna eat it up. And as the sun streamed through the windows, warming the worn wooden floors, Emma realized something. Kindness wasn't just a choice, it was a chain reaction. And hers had just gone viral. The weeks passed, and Grounds for Good became more than just a cafe. It became a movement. The hashtag Rice Coffee with Honor inspired other businesses to launch their own veteran discounts, and news outlets picked up the story of the fired barista who started a wave of change. But for Emma, the real victory was quieter. Frank used his back pay to secure a small apartment near the cafe and started volunteering with a local veterans outreach program, one that Daniel helped fund with a percentage of the shop's profits. The young Marine who'd wired the espresso machine wrong? He became their best part-time barista. And Mr. Carter? He stayed on, washing dishes with a dedication that surprised even himself, eventually earning a promotion to assistant manager. One evening, as Emma wiped down the counter after closing, the bell above the door chimed. She turned, expecting Daniel or Frank, but instead a stranger stood there, a woman in a business suit with a hesitant smile. Are you Emma? She asked. Emma nodded. Can I help you? The woman stepped forward, pulling a folded newspaper from her bag. A feature on Grounds for Good with Emma's photo. I run a nonprofit that helps veterans transition into civilian jobs. We've been trying to get programs like this started for years, but we never had the right story to push it forward. She paused. Until yours. Emma blinked. What are you saying? The woman smiled. I'm saying we want to replicate this, nationwide, and we'd love your help. Emma's hand stilled on the rag. Just over a month ago, she'd been fired for a single act of kindness. Now that same act was rippling further than she ever imagined. Frank appeared in the kitchen doorway, drying his hands on a towel. You gonna say yes, kid? Emma laughed, shaking her head in disbelief. Yeah, I think I am. As the woman left, promising to email details, Frank poured 2 cups of coffee, one black, one with cream, just how Emma liked it. They clinked mugs in a silent toast. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the sidewalk where a faded Daily Grind Cafe Now Hiring sign still leaned against the trash bin. But no one even glanced at it anymore.